When Mrs. Margaret Ann Lehmann of Cache Creek passed away in August of 1889, there were no burial grounds in the town of Ashcroft. So immediately residents began looking for some land they could attain for cemetery use. Land was acquired from J.C. Barnes for the price of $50, the money coming from public contributions. The cemetery was run by a committee consisting of Isaac Lehmann, Walter Gladwin, and Walter Fern. Mrs. Lehmann became the first interment. Her husband Isaac, who was a blacksmith, constructed the fence that you see here today. In 1929, Isaac Lehmann, who was the only remaining person on the committee, transferred the cemetery land to the Ashcroft Board of Trade. In the 1960s, the village of Ashcroft took over management of the graveyard. So this is the older part of the cemetery, and you can see that many of these grave sites have these elaborate memorials, which were quite often made of sandstone or marble. Now the gravestones are made more of granite and are laid flat for easier landscaping. So we're just going to have a look at a few of these headstones of some of Ashcroft's pioneers in our graveyard. So the first headstone that I want to show you is the one of Margaret Lehmann, and just to the left of Margaret is her husband Isaac. Now Isaac was a jack of many trades. He was a blacksmith, an undertaker. He supplied residents with water. He also won many awards with his rifle shooting, and he invented a mechanism for setting tires. Next, we're visiting the grave of Charles Emlyn. Emlyn, originally from Ontario, came to BC in 1862, like many others in search of gold. However, after a few unsuccessful years of gold mining, he soon gave up and went to work for the Cornwalls at the Ashcroft Manor. He and Phil Park worked together at Cornwalls for a bit. Then they became partners in a roadside house near Cache Creek, the Bonaparte House. From there he turned to ranching, and most people will recognize Emlyn from the ranch he owned just outside of Cache Creek, which still bears his name. But what some people might not know is that he was also a politician. In 1871 he was elected. Well, not really elected. He and another candidate tied for third place, and instead of having a revote, both their names were thrown in a hat. Emlyn's name was drawn, and so he became a member of BC's first legislature. From 1898 to 1900, he served as premier of the province. So we have a former premier buried in our little graveyard. Not far from Emlyn, we find Phil Park and his wife Fanny. They were from County Sligo, Ireland. So we already heard a little bit about Park, who along with Emlyn ran the Bonaparte House. Park also became a successful rancher, and his ranch just north of Cache Creek, the Bonaparte Ranch, was in the Park family for several generations. We also find in this area the grave of Walter Fern and Walter Gladwin, who along with Lehmann were on the first Ashcroft Cemetery Committee. Fern was from Scotland and was a carpenter, and Gladwin had a forwarding business, and the little hamlet of Gladwin near Lytton is named after him. Also in this area are the graves of James and Katherine Haddock. If you check out our building section on the website, you will find more about the Haddocks. Next week we will explore some more of the cemetery and the people who rest here.